The Enlightenment, period when philosophers believed they could apply the scientific method and use it to explain the human nature logically. Revolution of thought. Rationalism assumes intellect acts as the basis for all knowledge. Humans therefore achieve more through their ability to think clearly and logically. Enlightenment thinkers believed in natural law, in which objects in nature were assumed to act in ways that were predictable. The laws of nature govern the universe and its creatures. Those form the basis of the natural sciences. Nature is both eternal and universal. Assumption that God created the universe and all living things, just as the laws of gravity govern planetary movement. Other laws govern human behavior, therefore the identification of natural law is the ability to live in harmony. Newtonian view of the clockmaker influenced thoughts. God did not act directly in human affairs, therefore human actions mattered most in determining the future. Thinkers therefore downplayed the importance of religion, thereby inviting secularism into their work. Secularism, belief that religion and religious bodies should have no part in political institutions or affairs, advocated the removal of all religious elements from society. No connection between government and religion. The divine right of kings gave way to the free will of the people. No surprise, therefore, that America, Western, and Europe would be home to both social and political revolutions. Ideas of the Enlightenment. The belief that man could achieve the same sort of progress in other fields of inquiry, and that created a certain sense of confidence and optimism. This feeling was adopted by writers who sought to find solutions to alter the great social and political problems which plague society, manifested by concept of perfectibility. Progress could be achieved by applying human reason to man's problem. Reflected by the feeling that Europe had emerged out of a dismal and barbaric past into a more forward-looking period filled with unlimited possibilities. Emboldened by a growing wave of support, they attacked what they considered to be unenlightened: mercantilism, religious intolerance, and ineffective education. Huge step forward in the freedom of thought, expression, and belief, in a movement that distanced society from superstition, ignorance, religious intolerance, and persecution. Root of liberal thought. Personalities of the Enlightenment. Thinkers of the Enlightenment were known as philosophs. Each philosoph attacked unjust and outdated concept of the past. Pierre Bailly. Major work is Historical and Critical Dictionary. He introduced the concept of skepticism. Nothing should be accepted as real without proof. Therefore, first response is doubt. Foundation for attacks on institutions. Denis Diderot, author of the Encyclopedia, attempt to encapsulate human knowledge and celebrate the achievement of mankind. Condemned the Pope, and the Encyclopedia was condemned by the Pope and banned by French government because they feared the radical natures of philosophers. Cesare Beccaria, major work on crimes and punishment. Called for reform of criminal justice system, the end of torture and capital punishment, because punishment does not equal reform. Faced censure and attack and declared an enemy of religion, because the Catholic Church favored a heavy hand. Adam Smith, major work, The Wealth of Nations. Described a capitalist economy in which man was free to pursue his own personal wealth. Tried to explain the laws that govern the natural process of an economy. Supported free trade and the invisible land of competition could regulate economy via law of supply and demand. Laissez-faire approach. Let us do. Let do. A.R.J. Turgot. Major work, Reflections on the Distribution of Wealth. Physiocrat who was an early voice in liberal economics, belief in natural rights and natural law in economic systems, and argued for reform to achieve progress. Enlightened despotism. System of government led by absolute ruler who was receptive to new ideas they allowed to enter the policies of their country, inspired by the philosophers. Monarch who attempted much needed reform. Frederick the Great of Prussia regularly corresponded with Voltaire and philosophers, therefore was greatly influenced by ideals of enlightenment. His goal was to create an enlightened kingship. Deist and rationalist who was a skeptic and patron of philosophers. Built Sans-Souci, without worry, the philosopher's paradise. His duty to act as the first servant of the state, but as an enlightened leader he was a paradox. Enlightened aspects of his rule. Applied enlightened ideals to benefit every class of people. A strict code of conduct for public servants, prevent corruption and deny them personal gain. Prussianism, a new way of life, brings safety and stability and security. The application of militaristic values of order and discipline to civil government. The system becomes synonymous with German character for a long time. Despot. Maintains strict and rigid system, therefore rank and power structure is firmly entrenched and unchanged. Prussianism instilled a sense of military precision that fostered an aggressive nationalistic attitude in government, sowed seeds of 20th century conflict. As monarch, only he was properly suited to meet the needs of his people. He therefore failed to train someone to succeed him, and what he built disappeared immediately. Maria Theresa, mother to Joseph II of Austria, and co-regent with her son for 15 years. She opposed his reform efforts and therefore delayed much of what he tried to do. Joseph II of Austria, King of Austria and Holy Roman Emperor. His formal education came from Voltaire and the encyclopedists. He greatly admired the life work of Frederick the Great. Enlightened aspects. Attuned to the hardships of peasant life, made every attempt at reform. Was a friend to religious intolerance. Looked to remove the restrictions placed on education and trade. He tried to do too much in too short a period of time. He therefore faced strict opposition from all levels of society. Despot. Power of the church was limited and subject to state control. Controlled by the crown and the state, designed to limit the years of damage and abuse of the church. Created a secret police to control those who opposed his reforms, aka the unenlightened. Assumed too much power and made massive cuts to the state bureaucracy, which upset nobles when he eliminated their cushy positions. Catherine the Great, Tsarina, was a great admirer of Frederick the Great, and her education came from ideas of the Enlightenment through the Philosophes. Aspired to reign as an enlightened monarch. Wanted to attain new heights of civilization, and was conscious of her image. Corresponded with Voltaire and Diderot. Brought French fashions and customs and language to her court and high society. Built the Winter Palace, Versailles inspired. Enlightened aspects. Effort to reform the bureaucracy made it more efficient. Attempt at limiting the use of torture. Religious intolerance, except for Doukhobors and Jews. Improved the medical institution. She funded hospitals and vaccination programs. Education reforms accessible to peasants and girls. A uniform law code. Added 5,118 kilometers of territory, which gained them access to valuable new and natural resources. Owes her title to aggressive foreign policy. Despot. Attempts to alienate the nobles, and she's forced to spend time and energy in preventing a coup, which fails. 1773. Pugachev Rebellion. Noble-led peasant revolt. She is forced to drop all pretense of enlightenment. She failed to abolish serfdom, diversify the economy, therefore stuck in agrarian roots, a backward giant, and with aggressive foreign policy, the tax burden remained. Enlightened despotism. Experiment in enlightened rule presents a case of dialectic. A revolutionary process, in which progress comes as a result of the conflict between two opposing forces. It was a collision of idealism and the ideas of the Philosophes, and the realism of governing messy humans. Results was an imperfect reforms of absolutism and the ideas of the Philosophes. Success of enlightened despotism. Their attempts stood proof of the monarchs acknowledging of the general need for changes. There was a rise in literacy and education, expansion of religious tolerance, a more just legal system, and less arbitrary judgments. Altogether, the lives of the peasants improved. As well did infrastructure, and that aided local and national development. The expansion of education meant a larger number of people became literate, sparking a new awareness. Larger encouragement of new ideas fostered by the period, progress seemed limitless. Expansion of secularism, its radical growth targeted the Catholic Church, reflected movement towards personal liberty and the empowered optimism of enlightenment. Failures. Each monarch also pursued wars of aggression and expansion. Drain on the men, people, and money, distraction from their attempt at reform. No monarch could lessen the tax burden carried by their people. Even though many would try, none would succeed, and it would eventually grow into a revolution in one nation, the French Revolution.